hope that many of our families had a chance to read Andy Crouch's TechWise Family this summer. And if you haven't, it's not too late. Get a copy of the book and read it. I have invited 3 members of our Trinity community to talk with me about the book, and I hope that this will help all of us engage with the ideas in Andy Crouch's TechWise Family. Well, I'm here with John Utz, the Dean of Students in the Upper School, and Ginnie Pitler from the IT department, and Sandy Kennedy, who has 3 Trinity students. So thank you all for joining me for this conversation. We're talking about Andy Crouch's TechWise Family, which we read this summer. I would love to hear from you what general impressions you had of the book. What did you like about the book, John?
I was really happy that we chose this as our summer reading because I thought it intersected really well with our life and a lot of the things that we're doing. I appreciated that Andy Crouch focused on character right off the bat. That when we, as an upper school and the middle school, and we adopted the digital learning initiative, we made character a big part of that, and thinking about how we can use technology as a tool to help reinforce things like justice, wisdom, self-control, and courage. So that it resonated with me. I felt like we're on the same page with this author.
Yeah. We're still talking with our students about those ideas every year, right? When they start school.
Indeed we are. And we try to return to those values in things like advisory settings or when we gather together in community blocks. And it's something that we try to balance, not sounding like a broken record and saying the same thing over and over again, to find new and fresh ways to enter into conversation with the students about these things, and what higher values can shape how we use the technology.
Yeah. Jenny, what were your impressions of the book? Were you expecting to like it, and were you surprised by it, or what did you think?
I think I had some reservations when I heard about the book, but it didn't take me long. As soon as I got into this book, I was so excited about it. And I hate to overstate excitement, but I was like, this is what I've been waiting for. Because in my world, I hear so many words come through. The 4 C's, creativity and collaboration and critical thinking. You hear those in an educational sense, but I felt like Andy Crouch took those and put them into families, put them beyond education and into the way we want to work with our children and our students. So it made it real. Yeah. I was afraid that the lens would be on me, and people would say, how do you react to this book? What do you think of this? And I just want it clear that it was something that I really thought he just articulated so well. It's a gift to read what he had to say about technology-wise family.
Yeah. So that's great to hear that our IT department wants to pull together with families to help them live out tech-wise family life. Yeah. Sandy, how about your family? What was this book like for you?
Well, I loved it. I know I reached out to you during the summer after my family had read it. We had a lot of dinner conversations. A lot of things with the way the book was written, I felt was very honest, very refreshing, honest from the author. But for me as a parent, I think it gave us additional resource that we're not in this alone, that the book talked about so many of the common challenges that we're having of, between middle schoolers and teenagers, a lot of the arguments of why they need to have their device in their room because it's their alarm clock or what have you, gave us just an additional resource in parenting. So for me and for our family, it was very well timed and very welcomed.
That's great. And tell us about your family, your 3. Where are they in the Trinity pipeline, and
Okay, well, we've got 3 children here that are 2 in middle school in 7th and 8th grades, and then our oldest son, Franklin, is in 9th grade, so entering upper school here at Trinity. And again, just so timely with what they're going through. I think it also helped to educate us more on something that we hadn't thought about, and that is this is a group of of individuals who are growing up only knowing this mechanism of communication, which is different, I think, from those of us here. So it really helped us to affiliate more with what they are going through and how they're living their lives.
Yeah, that's great. John, I wanted to ask you, you've got kids of your own, so you read this book with your own family in mind, but also you've got a huge family of upper school, 160 some odd students up there. What were some ideas that you gleaned from this book?
So I agree with what Sandy said about our kids today have only ever known a world in which you can hop on the internet, and it's become really pervasive. It's always available no matter where you are. And one of the key ideas from the book that I really liked and really resonated with something I've noticed over the years that I've taught and been involved with young people is this distinction between using technology to consume versus using it to create. And I think Ginnie also talked about creativity and collaboration being a key part of how to use technology well. And I've definitely noticed those people who are the most productive and happy and successful in life are ones who have an outlet for creating and not just passively consuming things. And so I found that resonated both thinking about my own home family life and how can I encourage my kids to be, reaching for, art supplies or reaching for, using their technology to build something in Minecraft rather than just watching YouTube videos. And I found thinking about how we use technology in the upper school, I think we are at our best when we're collaborating with students, when they're using that iPad not just to watch a video, but instead to be making a video. And so they're thinking in terms of integrating the material that they've learned, and they're active participants in that creation of knowledge. That can be hard. I think the overall thrust of our culture is to push people towards that more passive role. And so we have to be intentional about working against that pressure. And it definitely takes more work from educators. It takes more work from parents to push kids, because it's not necessarily what they're going to want. They like passively just consuming, and we all know what that's like to sort of binge on some form of entertainment. But I think we also are all familiar with that sense of feeling kind of sick after you've watched 8 episodes in a row, and like, what have I done with my Saturday? That we're all better off when I think God didn't intend for us to be in that passive consumer role. That as He is our creator, we're also meant to be creative and creators in our own right. And
Yeah, Tolkien talked about being sub-creators, called to join in his creation. I like that. Felicia Wu-Song is a sociologist at Westmont College. She was here at Duke last year, and she talked about this. Her area of specialty is she's a sociologist that studies the effects of technology on adolescents. So she had some really interesting things to say. And one of the things that I remember she said was that it takes a village to do this well together. I'm paraphrasing her, but that the work of doing technology well to living tech-wise families and a school family is something we need each other to do this. A single person and even a single family can't necessarily do this all by themselves. And that really resonated with me as I thought about the Trinity family. And I wonder if any of you wanted to comment on that, or particularly on things that Trinity is doing to help our families live tech-wise lives together.
I'll start off by saying, representing parents, I think that, again, just this opportunity to be better educated, and then also the forums that you're going to be setting up, and our abilities to partake into smaller groups and discussions here, getting getting people on the same mindset of not just the challenges but the dangers, and then also advice on how to use it well, restrictions that have worked well, because I think that I love that term, it takes a village. We can learn so much from each other, and I've learned so much from other parents, and so I think that to me is one of the greatest gifts of the Trinity community. I think that with that community comes the ability to reach across to another parent if you see your child is having an issue with text at a certain hour, and you're coming from the same place and you have an opportunity for that dialogue as opposed to just coming out of the blue with why is it a problem to get a text from your child at 11 at night.
Yeah. I think of even the question of when should our kids get cell phones.
Right.
It's a communal kind of value. There's a standard that we set together as a community and expectations. And part of my hope is that this book would encourage parents to talk to each other to say, when do we want our kids to have cell phones? They're going to have them,
Right.
but is sixth grade the right time? Is fifth grade the right time? Is eighth grade the right time? And families are going to make different decisions about this, right? But our decisions impact each other. I'm sure I hear from parents all the time that say, my kid says, I'm the only kid in my class that doesn't have a cell phone. And
Or I'm the only one not on Snapchat or
But I think
social medias.
I think we could work two ways here. If we start with the right question, like why do you want a cell phone? What's it going to be used for? And it's very much the same way or the same question we ask in the classroom. We don't start with the device and say, I've got this device, what can we do with it? But rather we start with what are our learning objectives? What do we want to teach our children? And can this device or can this tool help us? So those two things really work together, and why we are using this tool, or what do we need this tool to help us with to become the engaged, to do this engagement with the tool rather than just consuming it like you were saying. I really think those two things work together. One thing that I've heard not too long ago is that these devices are not technology to our children and our students. This is like saying the telephone was technology when I was coming along. It was something we just used.
Right.
So we want to be a tech-wise school. We want tech-wise families. But the truth of the matter is this is not technology to these individuals. But we also need to guide them through what we do with it, the purpose of it.
Yeah. Yeah, the iPhone is 10 or 11 years old, so
Right.
our fifth graders have never known a time without that, and so it's like the pen to them, right?
Exactly.
Right.
It's just something they use. So I was particularly struck by Andy's use of the phrase "easy everywhere." Do you remember that? And the way that connects with a classical education, particularly one that asks students to really master things that are challenging and they're difficult. I wonder if did any of you think about that phrase "easy everywhere"?
I liked how he pulled in that definition of a tool. He takes a hammer and he says that that's a tool, but it's not. A hammer makes your job easier, but you also have to learn how to use the hammer. And there's nothing easy about learning to use a tool. Maybe we should say maybe a chisel. And that's the same with this tool. Is again, if we create and if we use it to collaborate, there's nothing easy about learning to do what we can do with it, but the tool itself is easy everywhere. And he's right about that.
Yeah.
I think for us, it also resonated that the easy everywhere, what David and I discussed was that it actually can give people seeming permission to disengage when they hit something, a topic, a conversation, an event that they personally don't find interesting. Even if they just perceive it to not be interesting, it's almost as if they don't give it a chance, and they are socially allowed to be on their device, which is a disengagement of the easy everywhere. So I think that use of a device is something that we're very cognizant of, being role models for our children as well, to show, this is not an option of just disengaging. You still can learn something, or if for nothing else, it's the character and showing of respect to the event or the person that's speaking as well.
And the opportunity we have to teach students to be present in the classroom with one another at mealtime, lunchtime, or on the athletic field, or wherever they are, to be where they are and flourish there. Yeah. So, are there things that that Trinity could do to help support families better in the tech-wise way that Andy talks about? Were there any things that occurred to any of you as you read this?
I personally think Trinity's doing a great job in so many different ways. One of the statements that we make a lot in our house is, live your life, don't post it. Live your life. Your life is to be lived, not just posting your events doesn't validate that you are living. So I personally love the fact that middle school dances, movie night, events that are device free intentionally, so that students feel that freedom and that liberty to dance and not be worried about how's this going to look when it gets posted. I can't reinforce that enough to say how significant I think that is in the development of the creativity, the spontaneity, and just kind of the maturing goofiness I think that kids need as they're learning social interactions and engagements, dancing, and just communing with each other.
Yeah. John, what is the cell phone policy in the upper school, and how does that relate?
So we also have a no cell phones at especially at the dances, and I've found that to be so healthy. It's funny. Last year at our winter formal, we were in a ballroom that was adjacent to a Fuqua School of Business event, and we had more than a few Fuqua students come and think that they were going to be at our event and get very indignant that we were asking them to give up their cell phones. And so a few of those folks stuck around to talk to me about who we were and what we were doing, and to ask why can't the kids have their cell phones? And it seemed to them to we're almost infringing on a constitutional right to be plugged in all the time. But when we talked about our reasons, that we want students to be present, and we want them to be able to be fully engaged in communal life, but also not to have to worry about how something might be presented by someone else, that you might look awkward and then that picture ends up on social media. And it was funny, these older Fuqua students, some of them said, wow, I had never thought of that, and it makes so much sense. And so I think it gives kids permission to just enjoy themselves without this sort of double consciousness of wondering, how do I appear in this other life that I live virtually online? Yeah. I don't know if I answered your question. In terms of the upper school, we have pretty strict rules on cell phones should not be out unless it's for a specific pedagogical purpose for which you have permission. Otherwise, we don't want to see them. And that, again, it's because, as you were saying, it's so easy to disengage. And so if I'm not talking in the classroom discussion, well, then I'm bored. And so I'll just quick get on and check to see what the latest sports scores are. And the problem is so much learning takes place, in a group discussion by listening. And by, taking what other people are sharing and comparing it to what you've found in the readings or in, previous discussions. And that's the real way that we hope for our students to grow.
Or by becoming uncomfortable. Or I think students, people, hop on their devices when they have nothing else to do. They're alone. They're uncomfortable. So this brings a community to them immediately, easy everywhere, an easy everywhere community. But I think it's good to get uncomfortable. And at school, that's a safe place to get uncomfortable, so that you learn to reach out, how to be alone, or how to seek not being alone. And I see that here at Trinity. I don't see, I have the pleasure of being out and about in all 3 divisions. And I think I'm right about this. I mean, I know what I see, but I don't see a lot of phones out. I really don't. I see when students are by themselves, they might have a phone. I think they're listening to music, but they have something else going on as well. So I think Trinity does a good job. I would like to hear the students talk about that a little bit, but I really do.
We could have included a student in this conversation. Probably would have been good, yeah. So might be a good time to just put a word in for parents. Don't text your students during school hours. That's counterproductive. In keeping those cell phones away. One of the things that you said, Jenny, that made me think of Andy's book was the risk, the sort of taking risks, being uncomfortable.
Right.
That these devices allow us to live more risk-free in certain ways. Say like texting is less risky than calling, right? I think this generation likes to text rather than to call, and just how challenging. So a conversation, for example, is a risky kind of thing because you don't know what somebody's going to say, and you don't know how you're going to react. And I was led to Sherry Turkle. She talks about Turkle and her research. I looked at a couple of TED Talks. That was interesting, and she's done some research around conversation and the sort of dwindling of conversation in our culture. I thought that's a skill Trinity students ought to learn, is how to have a conversation. And so things like that. I hope Trinity is doing a good job with that. I hope we could do a better job. One of maybe the elephant in the room that I'll mention, how about our iPads, our one-to-one, DLI, the Digital Learning Initiative, that now we are just calling our digital learning because the initiative is well launched. We're into our 3rd year of it. Are there ways in which the pressures that puts on families runs counter to some of the things that Andy's talking about in this book? Probably be good for us to just face that and admit it and ask how we could do better. Any thoughts on that?
With the iPads, we personally, with our family, we've not had any issues other than sometimes that frantic, where's my cord? It's got to be fully charged by the morning time, and some scamper at night. But again, I feel that there's a good balance of work assignments that are digital versus those that are not. So I think that the class projects that they work on, especially through middle school, that I've seen, where they are working together for an end product, whether that be a presentation, sanctuary, what have you. I personally have seen a really good balance there. So I can't say that we've seen an issue with the iPads specifically.
That's great. So well-designed assignments from the teachers, and that's on us. That's our job. What about screen time? Is that in terms of limiting screen time? Have you found that your kids are spending more time than they used to on screens, and is that an issue?
I can't say it's been a significant issue for us. I think that again, the way that we set up our house is that, if you're on, we've got one laptop and it's in the kitchen. So if you're on the screen, everyone's walking through there, and you kind of self-monitor time. Plus, you've got 3 children that are all wanting the same computer, so that can automatically, give some limitations for any one person. But I've not seen a marked increase of their screen time. I think that, again, the challenges to us are just more of the social media. And again, that goes more to their individual devices and the discipline. And I think also the discipline that it takes for David and me to be a good example to them. That our children know when we're multitasking. We call it multitasking, but it really is we're not paying them attention. And just having that conversation to say, I need to make a phone call now to this person. I'll be with you in about 5 minutes. Even just something that simple as opposed to trying to do both at the same time. And we see our people in our society doing it all the time. And it's one of those things that's creeping into almost becoming socially acceptable. So again, I think that it's really more the devices that we, as parents, are challenged with, more so than the screen time itself of school, iPads, and assignments.
It sounds like you've done a good job in your family of setting those perimeters, and we went through some of those at the launch of the DLI to say, put your computers or your screens in a central location so that you can keep an eye on it. All screen time is not created equally. So that's what you have to be aware of. And it sounds like you've taken some of those rules or guidelines. And
well, make
really
no
put
mistake,
them
in some of the very candid self-assessments that, and that was one of the things I really liked about the book was laying out the principle, giving some of the explanations to why it would be beneficial or why it would be dangerous, some alternatives and some solutions. I really like that honest assessment of how are we doing in the Crouch household, and that caused us to do some assessments there. And so there's still a lot of things that the Kennedy home can do and can change, and this certainly helped us to see some of those specific areas of weakness for us. But I really like the way the book was written in that very honest and transparent, almost vulnerable way
Right.
in some chapters.
the reality checks. I think
Exactly.
we're spot on, and a good opportunity to say, yes, this is the same reality in my house, and what can be done.
And that's a real gift that Andy has, I think, that humility and vulnerability and honesty. And put a plug in for next Wednesday, the faculty of Trinity is going to Skype with Andy Crouch. He's agreed to spend some time with us. We're sending him some questions ahead of time. And any parents who wanted to come and sit on it will be in the hub, and we'll have extra chairs if you wanted just to listen in on that conversation. We'd be glad to have you join us for that. And so I think one of the things that's happening even in this conversation, and my hope is through Andy's Skyping and some book groups, I think we're going to try to organize reading groups, people who have read the book or want to read the book to come together and talk about it. And some other things we have going on this year is to get our families talking to each other more about this. I think the unexamined technology life is really dangerous. It's really good for us to just think about what we're doing. I know reading this book has made me more conscious just of being on my cell phone when I'm out in the carpool line or something, and it's realizing the impact that has on others and on myself that I probably wasn't aware of. So, any other thoughts that you all wanted to add about this book or things that you got from it?
I think choosing the book was the perfect way to start this conversation and to start the encouragement behind getting us all to talk about this. Just putting it out there, I think, is a big statement about how intentional we're being here at Trinity to take a look at this.
I absolutely agree. I think that this is really just for us one example of how throughout our experience with Trinity, you really have done a great job of being our parenting partner. And that's truly the way I felt when I read this book as well, was another resource and a partner in navigating some of these challenges that quite frankly, we hadn't given a lot of thought to.
Well, thank you. That's our goal, that partnership, and it's challenging, and there will be new challenges ahead, right? Every generation, but we want to face those with hope and optimism. And thank you all for your time today. Appreciate it. So thanks for joining us for this conversation. I hope it was helpful. We have several things to follow up. We mentioned the Skype session on next Wednesday, September the 6th at 3:30 in the Hub. Parents are welcome to join us for that. We also are going to be organizing some book groups to talk about Andy's book. And in October, we have a viewing of the movie Screenagers, which will dive deep into some of the issues around this, and we'll have a panel discussion following that. So please join us for these and other opportunities to continue to talk about how Trinity can be a tech-wise school family.